Well, good morning. My name's Amy. I am part of the delivery team for Creative Change Collective. I'm here this morning with Tom Jackson. Tom is the head of communities for Glasgow City Council. And Tom and I have just decided to catch up because Tom has decided to leave his current role as part of the board of Creative Change Collective. Is that right, Tom?
That's right.
Yeah, so we thought we'd use this opportunity to get to know a bit more about Tom, maybe have a chat about CCC, your experience with them, and talk about my own personal experience as well, because I've been involved in the organisation for just over about a year now in several different capacities. So it's always good to be able to share my experience and get to know a bit more about the organisation. So Tom, I guess so everybody knows a bit more about you and what it is you seem to be doing here today. Would you like to let us know who you are?
Yeah, no, thank you, Amy. It's really good to be here with you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation, particularly because you've had a long journey with Creative Change Collective as well. So, I mean, people will pick up the first thing you'll get is I'm not a Glaswegian.
Nope.
I'm not Scottish,
Yeah.
but I've been in the UK a long time, since '86. And it's been, just getting involved with the charity just brings me back to thinking about how I did start to get interested in issues around justice, issues around recovery. I actually, when I first came to the UK, I was teaching at Strangeways Prison in Manchester.
All right.
And I was teaching on the Young Offenders Wing. And it was in the 80s and issues around HIV were really prominent. And so the head of education just gave me a folder and said, oh, why don't you teach the young guys about that? And you just started talking to people and, went from teaching people about grammar and history to talking about life issues. And you realize, what's going on for people and, what people's own personal experiences were. So it kind of got me interested in that justice journey for people, got me interested in, a lot of young people there and their experience with drugs and alcohol. And, life moves its course and you end up where you end up, but I've always kind of worked in that field. And in terms of the Creative Change Collective, actually, it started out as a charity called Street Cones.
Yep.
And that goes back to a guy called Hugh. He was in Barlinnie Prison. And I used to work for an organization called the Community Justice Authority. And he wrote to me, said, I'm getting out in a month. And we have the Citizens Theatre in here. And it changed my life. And I'm going to do theatre. I'm going to do work and I'm going to bring this out there. And it was such an enthusiastic letter. And I thought, okay. So I wrote back to him and said, yeah, give me a call when you get out. Well, he didn't give me a call. He turned up on his bicycle at our office.
Right.
And we had a long chat. And he had a similar chat with about a dozen people and pulled together people with an interest in seeing that, there are things we could do differently. And he was really focused on the justice world. And particularly for young people, had his own experience of being in care and issues around justice for young people. And so we kind of gave some support to him starting out on that journey. The charity was small for a long time, did a couple of projects a year for the prison service, for housing associations, but it was really small. And slowly kind of it developed from there. And, I've been on that journey and that's more than 10 years ago now. Ever since.
Did you have an interest in drama and acting or anything like that before it, or was it just put in your path?
Right, in front of the cameras today
not for you.
is daunting enough.
Don't worry, I feel the same.
I'm interested in it. I'd love to see the impact of that. And I worked in some prisons down in England and worked with a theatre company called Geese Theatre Company. So I know what it can do and I've seen the impact. And it's just a different way for people to look at a story that can feel personal, but give you some distance from it. I've always found that you can see what works for people. Yeah. It's not for everybody, but it does work for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the prisons is there's a huge amount of people in there trying to get clean and sober as well. And, the thing about what I enjoy about Creative Change Collective is there's a group for everybody, no matter what your background. Yeah. And certainly in the prisons, there's people in there who are trying to get off certain drugs and things, and we come in and a lot of us have got experience in the recovery system outside of the prison system, and it gives them that opportunity to come in, do it in jail, and then when they get out, there's the community groups as well, which are more, I guess, recovery focused. So it's a really nice balance. A totally unrelated question though. why are you still in Scotland? Why are you not back in Canada? I did Australia for 6 years and everybody asked me that question. So I'm glad I've got the opportunity to ask someone else.
Well, actually, I grew up in New Jersey in the States.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And, there's things I miss, but no, I love Scotland. My holidays, I stay in Scotland and move.
Right.
The north of Scotland really appeals to me. Yeah. Glasgow is a great city. So, yeah, you put the weather aside and you can see there's a great place to live.
See, with Australia, it's like I always thought, I'll come back because Scotland's home. And it took me that 6 years to be away from here to really appreciate what we've got. But then it's interesting because you come back and you start to see all the negative stuff. But I guess with my role, you start to help people and try and move away from that negativity about Glasgow. So your role with Creative Change Collective, what is it you do now? Because I don't really know much about boards and chairs and charities. I'm completely new to all of this. So what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess every charity is different in terms of its board, but any registered charity will have a board who look after it. The word governance is often used. Right. It's thinking about the finances, making sure that we manage the resources of the charity well. And probably more importantly, that we look after people. Mm-hmm. We have people like yourself who lead on projects. Mm-hmm. You're the front face of the charity, and we have to look after you. And we have people who participate, and a lot of the people participating, might be vulnerable in different ways. So we need to look after them. So that's the responsibility of the charity to do things right.
Right. Okay.
But also to plan where the charity is going, to think, where do we need to be and what are the steps to get there? Mm-hmm. So my role, and currently I'm chair, as I said, I've been involved since before it was a charity, but I've been on the board for a long time now. And as chair, I guess to an extent, some of that is about trying to have a big picture and looking at it, but mostly it's about trying to surround myself by others on the board who live up to that word collective. The collective word's interesting in the charity name. We renamed it, it must be 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been a little while that we've been going by the CCC, the Creative Change Collective. But having a mix of people on the board with different skills and experiences so that we can do that responsibility. We can look after the charity and bring it to the next place. And it's been on a long journey. If you go back pre-COVID, the turnover of the charity was like £30,000 a year. It was doing a couple of small projects every year, just ticking over. And during COVID, we had an opportunity to do some things differently and to start to deliver some of the programs online and to reach people who were really disconnected. Yeah. COVID was, a shocking time for a lot of people, for everybody in different ways, but a lot of people really felt isolated. And so the charity grew in that and, developed some new skills, developed some new ways of working and continued to do a mix of line and live and online stuff. So, the charity has grown, but we recognize that charity could take it to another level. We'd love to be working in every prison in Scotland. With every community rehab, every residential rehab, working in every local authority with people who are on community sentences, because we've seen and we've had externally, evaluated the work of the charity, and it has an impact, and it has a really positive impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting removing COVID from the online thing as well. Alcoholism and addiction are very isolating illnesses if you believe it's an illness, and certainly from my experience when I was in active addiction, I didn't want to leave the house because I was scared, and not only did the online group, which I was a participant of, help me to connect with other people, it started to break that fear of being an alcoholic and being judged for it as well. COVID also gave us alcohol deliveries to the house, which did not help. However, it did bring some really positive things like the online sessions. And there's also people in so many remote areas that I think can be forgotten, that go back into the community and they can't physically get to something that is in person. So the online sessions, I think, are a great form of therapy and connecting other people. So there's a lot of good stuff that came out of that.
Absolutely. Definitely, as you say, engages people who might feel reluctant to step into a live arena, as it were. Yeah. But the rurality issue is another one. Yeah. And in Scotland, it would be difficult in some communities to pull together a group of 8, 10, 12 people to be in a group. Yeah. But online, you suddenly connect people, who geographically are isolated, but come together and form a tight working group.
Yeah, and they do. The bonds definitely form. You know, I still hope to see people that I've done the online sessions with, and it's still the same program that they do online as they do in person. And it helps so many people. It's just, you know, I guess the struggle is to get the funding and things to keep these types of things going. And like, how much of your role are you responsible for getting from? Where does the money come from? Like, I don't even know any of this. You know, I just go and I take part in things. But, you know, I always hear there's a struggle for funding. We're pushing for funding. So I guess what is the struggle and where do we get the money from?
Yeah. I mean, it's confusing in some ways why there is a struggle.
Yeah.
You know, we spend a lot of money on justice and recovery, and we don't get half the value we do from the charity. You know, it's very expensive to keep somebody in prison. But what could we do differently with that sort of money? Yeah. So sometimes it's hard to understand. But the reality is, a lot of, and we're not unique. Every charity is out there trying to find a way to justify its work, to show that there's value in investing in that. And we do get commissioned work a lot. And actually for a long time, that was almost all the money that came in. It was when local authorities or the prison service commissioned a piece of work.
Right, okay.
We do have other monies coming in. The Cora Foundation fund a lot of the work that's going on right now in rehabs and in the community. So a lot of the projects are Cora funded. And we have other grant funders as well. The Robertson's Trust have been very supportive to us. And we've had other smaller grants, particularly during COVID. We got a number of small grants to help us move forward. We got some money in from another grant to help us to work in Barlinnie Prison to set up some media work in the prison.
Yeah, I heard about that. Actually,
so equipment was bought to support them. So it is a big part of the board's role is trying to figure out if we want to get to a certain place, if we want to work in every prison, we need to find where the resources is. So what's the financial plan for moving forward? And that's not easy. It's a competitive field as well.
Yeah, I've heard there's lots of paperwork involved. Is that true? Yeah.
There are different applications. You know, some of them 20 pages long and some of them are shorter. But, you know, that's part of our role of governance of finance, and we need to demonstrate that. So we can't expect somebody to put their money into the charity if we can't show what the value will be coming out the other side.
And in terms of your personal commitment then, so what sort of time do you have to focus on being part of this? Because it is all voluntary, you know, you're not getting paid for this. So
and especially as a small charity, you know, your sleeves are rolled up a lot. So everybody across the board is really committed and gets actively involved. In a bigger charity, there might be somebody who writes your funding applications. In a smaller charity, the board carries some of that weight.
Right, okay.
I'd be hard pressed to say what it looks like in terms of hours. You know, there are some weeks I might do very little, and then there might be some weeks I'm spending a lot of evenings looking at things, a lot of hours spent, you know, working. But it's true across the whole board. We've got a good board in place. We're always looking for new board members, and again, just to broaden the experience. And you know, some people need to step away from the board as well. You know, everybody wants to have change. So we're always looking for new board members to help carry the weight of that.
And what sort of skill sets would be beneficial then to being part of the board?
I mean, there's no blueprint, but we are looking for a mix. We're always looking. It's not just numbers. It's about, you know, what people bring to it. So we have members on the board who bring life experience of recovery, of justice, and that's really helpful to us. We have people who have expertise in business acumen, and that's really useful. I've always worked in the public and the third sector, so I don't understand business the way some of the members are. But we have people. We have a retired head of justice services and social work. You know, we have people who have experience there. We'd always welcome people with financial acumen, you know, people who work in that sector.
Not me then, I'm out.
Me too. People with legal expertise, HR expertise. You know, it's always good to have a skill set there just to kind of look at that issue of governance and responsibility of the board with a different set of eyes.
Yeah, okay. Why are you moving on then? What's the reason for that, if you don't mind sharing?
No, I mean, I have no... I almost don't want to leave, but it's not right. I've been on the board a very long time. And I think if we hadn't had the experience of COVID, I'd have stepped back earlier.
Right, okay.
It's good for a board to have change. And we should have every few years, there should be enough of a turnover that you have a lot of new faces around the board. And as chair, it's really important that I find somebody to step into that role, and I step away and let new experiences, new drivers be there.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's kind of good practice in general, I'd say, for charities.
Yeah. And what's the perks of the job then? What have you enjoyed?
Yes. Actually, some of the most exciting things are when you get to go to live performances.
Yeah.
I've been to quite a few at Oran Mor, and it's because you not only see people at the end when they've had a long journey and they're so charged up for that live performance, but you see their family members and members of the community. You see them being cheered on, and it's very emotional. But it reminds you what. I can read a report from Glasgow University who've done an evaluation of the project and understand it, but it doesn't mean half as much as seeing it.
And have you got much involvement then, have you had experience of meeting people before their kind of journey through, maybe as a participant, to see what the outcome is, maybe from the justice side of things? Have you had any kind of overview of that and what it does for them?
It's very rare. It's very rare from the board perspective. And maybe that's something we should do better, is we often get that chance at the end to see people.
Yeah.
I've been in once I've been on one early session.
Okay.
To see people, but I didn't see their end performance.
Right,
so
okay.
That is, you take it on word from people like yourself who are facilitators to talk about the confidence people gain, the insights, the energy that builds as people participate.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lovely thing to watch. I'm quite fortunate that I've been involved in all types of programs. I've done the online session as a participant and a facilitator. I have done the sessions when I was in treatment centre, when I was in Abbey Care in rehab. So I've done that in person as well. And I've done the one that we did out in the community for people in community sentences. Gosh, I've done them all, and I've done the Community Glasgow group as well. And I've been in the prisons a couple of times. And it's always the same sort of effect that it has on people that are able to complete the kind of 12 to 14 week programme. And it's the sense of achievement that they get from it. And it's the confidence to believe in themselves. But there's also the therapeutic side. So for me, when I share stuff that I've done in the past or stuff that's happened to me in the past, whether it be negative or positive, I feel some sort of therapeutic value, whether it is that I can leave that in the past and be proud of the fact that I've come through it and I've lived it, or somebody else identifying with me, I get a real sort of buzz out of, because somebody can go, well, do you know what? I've had that experience as well. It's not just me. Yeah. That means I'm not as bad a person as I thought I was. I might have done bad things, but there was a reason for it. And that sense of community within the groups as well, because we all identify with each other, we all relate to each other. And to watch them then go up on a stage, or whether it just be in a room reading this piece of work that they've all contributed to, it's just an amazing thing for them to experience. And when I first did it in person, I'd only been in Abbey Care for 2 weeks. So I was, when you go into a rehab centre, you're put on a detox. So I was on a 7-day detox from alcohol, and it's a horrible process. You've got seizures, you've got sweats, you've got, it's just horrendous. And then to come out and be put in front of this drama group, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I am not doing anything and I don't want to do this. This is not for me, but I persevered with it. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever been, because it was on my birthday actually that I got up on stage and was part of this script. And I was reading poetry, and it was things that I hadn't done since I was a kid. And it was amazing to think, if I can do this now at this stage of my recovery, what can I achieve? However many weeks, months, years down the line. And it's really amazing to watch. So I guess for me, it'd be lovely if the board got to come and experience that as well. But from what I get is you're very passionate about it. And I think that is so important. And I guess does this complement your actual role that you do within Glasgow City Council? Is it almost like an add-on to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's distinct. It is something I do from a personal place rather than from a workplace, but it absolutely. So I've worked as I said, in justice and work really in a broader sense with communities, but these issues are real and live in every community across Glasgow. And I do believe that my experiences with the board, with the charity, enhance what I do in the work. Give me an opportunity to step back and see a different take on all of this. Will you still be coming to the live performances then? Absolutely. I don't know where I would be if I had to go through the journey you went through.
Do you know, it'd be interesting.
You described it being you didn't use the word intimidating, but that's what it sounded like. How do you, as a facilitator, get people past that? That must be really hard. You got 12 new people there.
Yeah. It can be very challenging, especially there's a variety in the different groups. And, you know, I think to walk into certainly a treatment centre or a prison to be faced with just no, I'm not doing this is very confronting and it's very difficult. And you don't know what these people are here for, what journey they've been on. You know, they've probably had a pretty hard life. But for me, I've got that extra kind of trick up my sleeve that I've been there. And I can share that experience. I can talk to them about how I felt and what it's done for me now. You know, I'm fortunate enough that I'm still with the company and, you know, facilitating, which is something that a year and a half ago when I was in that treatment centre, I thought I'd never be able to do. And just being kind and open to them, explaining we don't force anybody to do anything, you know, and a lot of it is just encouraging them just to sit in the room. You know, even if they just sit up the back and watch, they're still a part of it. Yeah. And I give a lot of praise to these people that walk in the door, you know, and they really need to be proud of themselves for just turning up. Because a lot of their lives they'll not have been able to leave the house or wanted to without something in their system, or if it was to commit a crime, you know, and these people are showing up and trying. Even if they're not actually doing the games. But what usually happens is somebody will sit at the back of the room and they'll see us kind of starting to laugh and people getting a wee bit open. And next minute, you know, they'll be in the circle, you know, and they might not be fully engaged, but they're trying. And that's all we ask is that people give it a try. And it's not for everybody. That's the other thing I need to remind myself of, because I've not to take it personally if they don't stay till the end of the session or they don't come back, because it isn't for everybody. But the fact they try it is a huge win as part of their journey, whatever it may be, recovery, because it's about trying new things and doing things you might not necessarily have liked or enjoyed before. But it is very confronting, especially with some of the characters can be quite, you know, intimidating, large, anything like that, and you're like, I'm just a wee blonde girl and I'm just going like that, please just do it. But it's just about showing them that people have done it before and just encouraging them.
How did you become a facilitator?
So once I left treatment, I was fortunate enough to be asked to be a peer mentor. And I think it was the online group that I went back to. Some things are a bit blurry with my past. Even when the alcohol was removed, I tend to forget a lot. And when I started doing the Glasgow in-person group as the peer support, and then I was asked if I would like to try doing the facilitator thing. And I was told, you know, we've got the plan of what you do, and it's more about just following this plan and letting the people in the group kind of guide you into what you're doing. So I gave that a go, and then before you knew it, that was me. I just caught the bug. And it was a big thing for me because I'd never written a script before. You know, I'd hardly typed on a computer for years. And what our role as facilitator is not only to facilitate what goes on in the session, but then to use what goes on in the session to create a piece of work, as in a script. And when I'd started, AI, that scary thing that we all have heard about, hadn't really been used as much as what we're using it now. So for my first online, I wrote everything from scratch, you know, and it was petrifying. And I did it the wrong way because I took this as a personal thing for me. This is all about me. Well, I've got an ego like this, which is something I work on, but everything was about me, and people are going to watch this and think that I'm a terrible script writer and it's going to be rubbish and nobody's going to come back because I can't write scripts. But that's not what this is about. This is about the sessions and the people turning up and the people in the sessions. So for me, that was a really good thing for my recovery. Right. To start focusing on other people, because in addiction and alcoholism, it's a very selfish thing. You know, you're really not focused on what you're doing to other people. It's about you and how you get your drug or your alcohol of choice. So for me, I still had those traits even though I was sober, to then have this job that wasn't all about me was a big learning tool for me. So it was really great. But then I started to use AI in the later stages, and that's taken a lot of that fear of me not being able to write a script. I can use AI as a tool. I can put what people say in the sessions into AI and ask it to create something around that phrase or that feeling or the game that we've played, and it'll come up with something, and then I can alter it to suit. So that takes the pressure away from me not being a drama person. You know, I've not been to theatre school. I've not studied. So for me, using the lived experience, but not having that pressure of being able to write a script or direct a play is really great. And it's what an opportunity, and doing things like this, and I've been parts of other groups and things through this as well. And also it gives me something to do outside of the normal recovery sort of tools.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we've got fellowships and we've got therapy and all that kind of thing. But this gives you another tool, a creative tool, I feel, to kind of express myself and also use my experience to help others.
Well, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That really is. And you work alongside quite a mixed bag of facilitators.
Yeah.
They all have something different they bring to the table.
Yeah, which is great because I get to learn from the people who have studied drama.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of people that I work with have done drama therapy in university, which, you know, I knew it worked, but I didn't really know why.
Yeah.
So to be able to bounce off them and understand the, I guess, the more technical side of it, is it the technical side about why drama therapy works, is quite interesting for me. And my confidence has grown in my script writing and all that kind of thing as well. But this time, I think I'm actually going to go back as a participant, if I'm allowed, to the Glasgow group, because I miss doing the actual program itself from a therapeutic type of view and getting up on the stage, because when you're facilitating, you know, it's about them.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to see if I can do that as well, and that, you know, to have that opportunity, because there is other recovery based drama creative type groups out there, but they don't focus on a therapeutic value.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of this, and also the anonymity side of it, which is a completely different concept to the community, and that it's certainly an easier way for us to explore difficult topics if that's where the group want to take us, but safely.
Do you want to say more about the anonymity? Because you're right, that is a real unique aspect.
It is, yeah. And it's something that took me a long time to get my head around, because when you've been in rehab or you've been in treatment, you're encouraged to be open and honest about what you've done and where you've been. But coming into Creative Change Collective, it's almost like the opposite. So what we do is we create a character. Now that character represents everybody in that group. So, you know, for example, at the moment in one of the groups we've got a character called Turner. Now Turner is male or female, depending on what you are, what you identify as. And Turner's had a traumatic life. Now, from what we've picked up, parts of Turner's life may be actual people in the room's lives, but we don't know.
Yeah.
And it means they're kind of safeguarded to know if they've really done this. Yeah. And a lot of the groups take the path that we follow Turner through the recovery journey, or the character in the recovery journey, and we'll do improvs or we'll do exercises, but the person that's doing them is Turner or is that character. And we say to them, if you want to talk as if it's about you or about your experience, you can do that, but you're Turner.
Yeah.
And it gives them that safety blanket of going, these people don't know if I've murdered my mum 10 years ago. It's maybe a bit extreme, right? Or, you know, that I've been, you know, an active intravenous drug user for 15 years. But I can say that. It might be I've only been there for a year. It might be I've been 20 years, but there's some sort of anonymity in it. Yeah. We don't ask for surnames. We don't ask people personal information as a facilitator, and it gives them that comfort, you know, that we can't go and find out a bit about them. And I think certainly in the prison, that's quite a difficult thing for a lot of people to do as well. Certainly my experience when I've gone into the jail is they want to tell you why they're there, you know, and we have to say, hold that thought. Let's talk about, you know, Joe Bloggs, the character, and talk about it in that sense. And it is quite unique, but it's definitely helped me as a facilitator as well as a participant to talk about my own experiences, but be safe about them.
Yeah.
So it's good.
And particularly, I mean, you talk about the prison, that setting, that people can bring a lot more to the table because they're in an institution, they're in a total place, and the people they're participating with they'll have to engage with for the rest of the week on a different basis. So it gives them scope to explore things maybe they wouldn't explore. And
I think in a different light as well, because from my limited knowledge of prisons, a lot of what they've done can be used as a bit of bravado.
Yeah.
You know, I've done this, I've done that, I look really good, you know, I'm top of because I've done this, this and this. But we're bringing them in and breaking that down. Doesn't matter who you are or what you are outside these walls. In this room, you are this character and nobody cares.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives them an opportunity to maybe look at it in a different light, maybe not be so proud of some of the things they've done or use it as an ego boost. Certainly with some of the different exercises we do, we're talking about them life after jail, you know, and a lot of the time you'll see the change in them if, you know, maybe if they've used drugs, it's early in the programme, you'll get a lot of them, oh, I was out last night getting pure mad weight, it's pure amazing. Whereas at the end of it, they'll start by talking about, I'm really looking forward to going out and having a night out, but drug and alcohol free, being with my family. And it's a whole change of mindset. And it's almost like they become the positive character, or they can be the positive character that's leaving at the end. Sometimes I like to look at it as a bit of an alter ego when we're doing the character work, which is a big therapeutic tool. It's almost like they're creating the person they want to be when they step out the doors or step out into the real world.
And where do people go from there? They've done 12 weeks. You talk about doing it multiple times.
Yeah,
do people go through and get something different because they're going through it from a different starting place? I
think so. And especially with the community groups, we've got a lot of people who have done it 3 or 4 times now. Right. But what we also do is we rotate the facilitators. Okay. And every facilitator brings something different to the table with their backgrounds or the way they run the programme. Right. And also because they're out there living in society, in recovery, they're bringing their experience of that to new people who are maybe just, early recovery. Yeah. And it's every 12 to 14 weeks is completely different. Do you know, I've not looked at a live event and thought that was really similar to that last one. We've done, as you know, we've done a pantomime, we've done a recovery pantomime. The recent one in Glasgow was Out Your Goggle Box, which was, we got different TV programmes and we made them recovery based. So we had RuPaul's Drug Race and out your oh gosh, all these mental crazy things, but they're never the same. With some of the treatment centres, so one down in Saltcoats that I worked with, it was a beautiful story about a person going through this treatment centre, but their life before it and their life after it. And they actually ended up owning a treatment centre, through their recovery. And they're just all so different. I've not seen any of the ones in prison. I've not seen the live events, but I know every time the other facilitators go through them, they're a completely different spin. And then some people will come in and they'll be creative in terms of musically. So we have a lot of people bringing music, a lot of poems, and they're just all so varied because it's about them and they make it about them. It's not about how we make it.
I've always found when I've gone to live performances, one of the things that feels really poignant is the thread of comedy that runs through a lot of the contributions. You were talking about the Mad TV takes. Yes, but there is a thread there, and it's very poignant, and yet it makes you laugh, and then you suddenly realize what you've laughed at.
Yeah, definitely. Funny you say that, because in the Out Your Goggle Box one, we did a bit on laughter therapy, but we did it as a Dragon's Den pitch, and it was a tickle chair that the guys had invented. They came up with a tickle chair to pitch to Dragon's Den, and we talked about how laughter is such a good recovery tool. Yeah. And for a lot of these people, they don't laugh a lot. Yeah. Whether it be in the jail or whether they're in the community or in a treatment centre, a lot of it is heavy work they're doing on themselves and they need a bit of relief. Yeah. So when we start doing silly games, just to kind of break the ice, we always do an icebreaker as well, which can be a comedy one or it can be a bit more serious. It kind of sets the tone for some of the way that we go, and some of the exercises we can ask them to do it in a comedy sketch type style, and it gives them the relief. Even though we could be, one of them we talked about was a drug death, and we did it in a kind of reporter scene, and we said, go and report on this drug death, and we didn't give them anything. But then we had, the guys came out and there's somebody lying dead on the floor, and it turns out she's just, had too much buckfast on the weekend, and it was absolutely hilarious. But we're talking about a drug death. Do you know what I mean? And that's good for them to kind of express things that are probably quite real and true to them, but look at it in a kind of comic way. And as you say, still get that message of seriousness across.
And that's what the audience picks up. The comedy almost kind of breaks down your defenses to hear the story more because you're laughing and then suddenly you realise what's behind it all.
Because I always wonder from an audience point of view, some of the topics can be really difficult and how somebody who's maybe not is clued up or, knows about addiction or justice, how they take to it. So I think us putting that comedy lets us make them feel more comfortable. Yeah. Because I wouldn't like to go and see something that's all doom and gloom, but there is certainly parts of it that people have shared horrific experiences that they've had, but we can put it in, but pad it, sugarcoat it, I suppose,
Yeah.
if you like, but we're still getting that message across.
Yeah, no, it is. And as I said, very powerful. You
Yeah.
get that sense. And it may be family members or other people who have been in recovery before, or, we've brought elected members from Glasgow City Council
Yeah.
to some of the events. And, everybody gets the story. They hear it.
Yeah.
They feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do your family are they interested in it? Have they been to some of the shows?
I did. My daughter's gone twice with me
Right.
to the Ormore presentations because she
Yeah.
lives nearby there.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's what we talk about is that we've had the conversation a couple of times about that was really funny, but it actually was really, there was a lot behind that, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Those are the things that have really stuck with her, with me.
It'd be interesting to talk to some of the people who haven't, just coming in off the street to see
Yeah,
see what we do. It was interesting when we went to the last Glasgow one, and the people that we did it in Webster's Theatre, and they came in, and of course we don't, as you know, we don't do props, we don't do costumes, we don't do, it's not a professional production at all. It is about, what's written, and it's about these people. And they kept asking us, what props have you got? What scenery have you got? And then there's just the 10 guys sitting up in their black t-shirts, and it's like all stripped back, but it makes it so raw and so real, know? And I think there's a bit of a thing about being in addiction. We're all quite good actors when we're actively using. But a lot of the guys are really, really talented. And there's actually 2 people in the Glasgow group that have gone on and are now studying acting at college.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's amazing to see that. And they keep coming back and doing it. And they still keep growing in confidence every time they do it. They were very annoyed because I asked them to do a rap this time, and that was like, nope, we're not going to do a rap. But they did it, and they were great, And again, it's not about that performance. It's about them achieving what they do on stage.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to watch those journeys. The charity used to do more than it does now. Films, commissioned pieces of work. And similarly, a few people have grown through that. You've seen people who have played an acting role on a play.
Right, okay.
There was a good one Glasgow City Council commissioned about what is a community sentence? What does it look like? And you follow someone's journey on it. And that's a scripted journey.
Right.
It's a story. It looks pretty much like a journey that people would recognize. But interspersed are interviews with people who are on community sentences, people who in the community, benefit from those, and professionals maybe involved in that process. And I can remember the young guy who acted in it. He's gone on to do other things as well.
Has he?
So yeah,
That's brilliant. I think I'm looking into maybe doing some sort of studying following this, because I did actually. It's weird how life brings you back and kind of gives you signs. But when I left school, I started an HNC in acting and performing, and it was very much it was something to do at the time to get my parents off my back. I was just too busy enjoying life, partying, but I never completed it because alcohol took over. And now I've got this opportunity to maybe look at that and go back and complete something, 20 odd years ago that I did and never completed. And it's lovely that some skills that I might have used during that short time, I can now use today.
Yeah.
And so I find that quite interesting.
Yeah. That'd be a great future podcast, wouldn't it?
It would be, yes. Amy's journey through HNC. I don't know, maybe because I do this work, they might let me into the HND. Maybe if I put that out there in the universe,
you can get your
they'll
equity card,
skip you.
can't you?
Yeah, exactly. Do you know, it's interesting, and it is because as much as I love doing the games and things like that, I love watching people do the improvisations.
Right.
And it's really confronting, asking somebody to get up in front of people. But they automatically just go into this, what they know and what they've lived through. Yeah. And it comes out really easily for them. And it's, you think of people and you go, they're not acting or anything, this is real life. And you wouldn't, people maybe think that these people are acting, but this is actually their life. And I think that's what makes it so amazing. Yeah.
And as you say, there's the anonymity there, but actually it is all fueled by people's personal experiences.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time, I remember in one session that somebody decided they were Hammy the hamster and he had an addiction to steroids, and you're like, how much of this is your life and how, but do you know what I mean? You can put it into a funny sort of way, but it may be true that this person had an addiction, but that's the way they've chosen to express it. So it's fascinating.
Oh, brilliant. That is.
So I guess thinking about the projects that we've got at the moment, I know we're definitely in about 4 or 5 of the prison services, I think, off the top of my head, because they kind of keep rotating and things. And I'm not sure how many treatment centres we're in at the moment, but I guess what are the benefits to both the people that are doing it and also to the community outside of these types of programs?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about before, there's projects have been evaluated. There's a good evidence base about why this works. But if we take a step back and look at it from a bigger picture and you ask about the community.
Yeah.
If we think about justice in the first instance, 70% of people who are going to turn up in the sheriff court today are going to end up back there again.
Right, okay.
We have a high level of reoffending. And that suggests that somewhere our response to justice issues isn't working as well as it could. And we spend a lot on justice. You know, prisons are not a cheap option. And yet we have the highest incarceration rates in Europe. And we don't get a value out of it. So I think a lot of this is about thinking, can we do things differently? We could look at recovery as well. We have horrific levels of alcohol-related deaths and drug-related deaths. And every year we wait for the stats to come out. And why are we surprised that, sometimes we see a marginal improvement from the previous year, but we're still in a bad place.
Yeah, definitely.
So we need to think about how we invest in these social issues, and we respond differently to it. If we're looking about community safety, if we're looking about the welfare of individuals and the ripple effects when somebody, personally has that tragedy, how does it affect the whole community? So we know this has a value, and we have to find ways to think about doing justice differently, to doing, our response to addiction differently.
Yeah.
And I think Creative Change Collective has something to contribute there. It's not the only organization. The public sector, other charities out there do a lot of great work as well. You mentioned yourself, there are other charities doing similar, using the arts as a medium, a tool for engagement. But we do need to shift that balance a little bit. And there was a report done by Audit Scotland. It's a few years old now, but what it did, it looked at where we spend money on justice. And we tried to look at it from a Glasgow perspective. What does that mean? And we came up at the time, and we'd have to update those figures, but it's not out of sync really with today's figures, that we spend maybe £800 million a year in Glasgow responding to crime, responding to justice issues. But of that, only about 14% is preventative, trying to prevent it. The rest is reactionary. It's what we spend in the court process, in the police process, in our sentencing when it's in custody. And we need to shift some of that and think, what can we do to, earlier on in the system, do something that helps to change the direction for people and therefore change the impact for communities. Yeah. And I think Creative Change Collective is a player in that already and could be a bigger player. As I said, where does the board, where does the charity think it should be? You mentioned it does fluctuate, but we've worked in about 3 or 4 prisons, from time to time. We should be working across Scotland in the prisons, working across the residential rehabs. You said yourself, it's not for everybody, but it is for a lot of people. Yeah. And, putting that offer out, giving people a chance to try it. And some people take the journey the way you've described your journey and other people's journeys. And we need to do that, because that's how we'll change reoffending levels, community safety, and change the opportunities for people in terms of recovery. Yeah,
certainly from my personal experience, when I first started with the organisation and discussed going into prisons and things, I've changed my mindset about people in prison, and the way I was told to look at it. So it was around a conversation about a certain, area of the prison and us working in it, a certain type of crime that's maybe not, it's pretty frowned upon, right? And some people were not happy about going in and working with those types of people. And I was a bit like that at first. And I was like, oh no, they don't deserve this. They don't deserve that. They should go and rot in hell, all that kind of thing. But then somebody said to me, we don't have a life sentence. We don't have the death penalty. These people are going to get out into our society. So why not do some work with them, while they're in there, and hopefully try and change their mindset. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some people you can't change, but be part of that journey and try and have some sort of positive influence on them, because they could be living next door to you in 10 years' time. Yeah. And that for me was a big eye-opener. Because I've always just thought this, Miss Judgy, miss this, I know, right? These people should be locked away. Do you know, some people are just like me that are in jail. They've been in a blackout and they've not known what they've done. I've done many a thing in blackouts and not known what I've done. And they deserve a chance. So if we've got that opportunity to rehabilitate them or, change their mindset or give them an opportunity to show that people care about them, then why wouldn't we do that? And it is, like you say, it's things like creative change that could give that. And change is in our title as well. And it's about offering people the chance to change. And it's, it's about maybe changing other people's mindsets out with the organisation to help the funding process and, see if they can help while they're in there.
No, you're right. And you touch on the fact it's a very emotive issue. And some crimes elicit more emotion and more than others. And there's a place for prison, and prison, when it's left to do what it does well, can be very rehabilitative. But actually in Scotland, we have a lot of people who are in prison for very short periods of time. And prison service deals with volume rather than that qualitative response. So we need to first of all think about what our justice response is. And creative change can play a role in that in terms of community-based responses, as well as in terms of people in custody who need to be there for a period of time. And I do think, if we want safer communities, we have to do things differently. So we need to take these sort of opportunities.
And the thing about the treatment centres and rehabs is you don't get funding a lot of the time. And my personal story is I wasn't offered funding to go into a treatment centre for the first about year of my really bad struggles. And because I was just an alcoholic, if I'd injected in just an alcoholic, I wasn't good enough to get funding. But when I did get the funding, this was my third stint. So I'd done 3 times in rehab. My third stint, I did get awarded funding and I was able to go for a longer period of time. But when I say a longer period of time, that was 3 months. Now, I believe my addiction, my illness, whatever you want to call it, started very, very young. I kind of believe it's something I was born with, so that's 36 years of actively wrecking my life and using substances, alcohol to get away from me, to then be given 3 months time to resolve that. It's not enough time. So anything that you can get while you're in that facility, is going to assist you. And then again, having something to come out to when you're in the community. A lot of people say recovery starts once the drugs and the alcohol are removed, and it gets harder. So having different opportunities like CCC to go to, which is not necessarily deep, dark and meaningful, all about, how terrible a person you've been and you're having to rip open your soul and cry and all that kind of thing. It gives you another avenue to help recover, and a different type of community as well. Because I'm a big believer in, being around like-minded people but doing the right things is very important for people to kind of get back into society and kind of change their lives. And it's certainly something that I think I've got through that. So, and it's also using my story, it's an opportunity for people to potentially get back into the volunteering, to work, to get that confidence as well, to grow. And it's certainly having the lived experience, I think, helps you do this role. And as you said, even be on the board as well is beneficial to people because they kind of get the mindset. Because we're a bit like, we're all different from you guys, because we're addicts, we're alcoholics, but we're definitely not wired the same as somebody that could just sit and have a glass of wine and then they go to their bed after it, and it's about sharing that kind of experience with them.
No, I think that personal story is really critical. It's critical, as you say, for others to see, she's been on a journey, maybe I can do it too. So it's reassuring, but actually for communities, we were talking before about how emotive crime can be, how emotive, people can be very judgmental looking at somebody and, well, they've made a choice to do the things they're doing. And there's a truth there. But actually, when you get an insight into the person and you see him as a person, you look at it differently, you deal with it differently, and you respond differently. So I always think one of the other real values, and we probably don't do it enough in the charity, is from the live performances, is for people in the community to hear a human story behind this and to see it differently, and to see the optimism, the opportunity there too, that, actually people change. We all, nobody has ever live their life without a period of change, and we all make choices we want to do. We make New Year's resolutions, and we do or we don't fulfill them, but we know how hard change can be in life. So seeing something that helps people make that change is a real positive response, not just for the individual and their families, but for wider communities.
We were saying there that, ideally, we think creative change should be in every residential rehab, every prison, etc. What's stopping us from doing that?
It takes resources, and again, I come back to the confusion over, we spend a lot of money on justice. So, if we took a big step back and said, where's our best way to spend this money, we might do a little bit more. But it takes resources and it's hard work. And again, as we reach out, we want a new chair for our board and we want to have some new board members as well. Recognition, you're going to roll up your sleeves. It's going to be hard work.
Yeah, okay.
And a big chunk of that is, how do we match our financial planning with our aspiration? How do we do that?
Yeah.
And it's selling our services to the public sector. It is going out there to grants funds, and saying we have something to contribute. And sometimes that grant funding is a good way to demonstrate new areas of work. Again, during COVID, we were able to demonstrate the online value and to translate that into something that's carried on beyond the pandemic.
Yeah, if people just were able to come in and maybe try a session and just see the difference, that they would be so invested in it, because it does wonders for people. It really does.
It does, absolutely. And if you start to you could just look at this from a pound and pence, consideration. You don't need altruism, you don't need anything else, but you look at the investment and what it costs to run one of those programs. And you compare it with, actually you could run one of those programs for about the cost of taking 2 people out of prison for a year.
Right, okay.
And you'd run a really, really effective, program.
Yeah. And it's interesting with the people that are in long term, certainly in Barlinnie and Low Moss, they keep coming back. They keep coming back to every different session and they get something different out of it. And it's, interestingly enough, this is when I was in one of the prisons probably about 6-7 months ago, maybe a bit longer than that actually, and I've been in recently for other reasons, and it was the same group of people that had been in the start of that session, and the change was unbelievable. Now, a lot of these people were struggling with addiction issues inside the prisons. As you probably know, there's a huge issue, and I was very confronted the first time I went into prison and people were actively using whatever they were using. But for that first time that I was in, this was only a couple of weeks ago, most of them were not on any drugs. And I was like, whoa. I was like, what's happened here? What has changed, right? And I think it's I don't know how openly, I don't know if this will need to get cut out or not, but so what the obviously Low Moss have got the Recovery Cafe, the Recovery Hub, which is quite a new concept. And I know the chap that kind of leads that. So they run Creative Change Collective from that Recovery Hub, and they've got the fellowships coming in on whatever weekly. And the change in just that 6 months of that consistent program of these guys. Now, I'm not saying they've all just, giving up drugs and drinking just because of creative change, but it's definitely contributed to it.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful to see, because I wasn't going in expecting that at all.
And again, that sort of investment will have an impact on what happens with those people afterwards, and where we'd have to respond to them, differently if we didn't give them that support to make those changes.
Yeah.
And not everyone will make that change, that leap, a permanent one the first time round, but every time people make progress, they hold on to a little bit of that, don't they?
They learn every time, even if it's, a couple of weeks or whatever, they're moving away. And I think it's beautiful when people come in and realise how much fun they can have without using the substances and without the alcohol in their system, and them actually getting the confidence to let go. Because a lot of people just go, no, I'm not doing that. The next minute they're clucking and being a chicken and they're not caring who sees it. So it's really nice to watch.
Where do you think the charity will be in 5 years?
I guess if everything funding wise, then I don't see why there is a reason why we shouldn't be in every prison in Scotland. There shouldn't be a reason. Obviously I follow a fellowship. These fellowships are in prisons, rehabs, community places. Yeah. Why can't we follow that same pattern? Because it's similar work, it's similar recovery, it's about using your experience to better yourself. So there's no reason that we shouldn't, and I'd love to have, this is like big dreams now, like in every little community that we have, a little hub. And interestingly, in one of the rehabs, it's a family unit. So we actually ended up doing some work with the adults, and we did work with our kids as well, which was a really nice experience, because there's teenagers, there's children out there who have lived with people in addiction through the community justice system, and drama is a great tool for these kids. So I don't know if I'm thinking big picture now, like that everybody in the world is going to do drama therapy. But there's so many opportunities. I think even going into schools and using it for people, because you don't know, there could be 20, 30 people in a class and they've all got alcoholic addict parents, or have been through using that tool to maybe look at those type of topics, but in a fun, anonymous way. So again, they're not telling us if their parents are alcoholic, but they can work on how they feel about that. There's opportunity for that. But it's very frustrating for me because we're not doing that, but
you know what you've done? You've really kind of reaffirmed why it's really important that we get some fresh members on the board, and particularly a new chair, because you look at the world differently than I do. Your life's been different than mine, and you've got some great ideas. And we'd love to have more people with that experience. People bringing their own personal experiences to the board is really important. So I'd encourage a wide group of people to think about getting involved with the board. Maybe for some of them, chairing's not what they want to do, but I know there's somebody out there who will do that well. And again, it's really nice to hear your ideas where the charity could be, and thinking, the ripple effects. You're thinking about the families, you're thinking about the children, you're thinking about the communities, the schools, and how we could be offering something.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And also, I think people wanting to facilitate. We're always looking for facilitators. And that's the thing about it. You don't need to have drama experience. You don't need to be an actor. You don't need to be a teacher or anything. You don't need to have done anything like this before. Even if you are in recovery or you've been through the criminal justice system, this is an opportunity for you to come in and make a difference. And even, just come along to the sessions, have a go at them. And again, also for people to participate. Because a lot of the time, you need to kind of take your own action, when you get out into the community. Stuff's not handed to you on a plate in Scotland. It really isn't. You really need to fight for what you want, and we're all over social media. I'm looking at the camera. Social media, doing a plug. We're on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. Have a look at what we do, and if you can identify with it or relate or see some sort of thing that you would like to have a go at, don't be scared to do it. I think that is a thing.
That's a really good call out. And we even do the old fashioned, we have a website as well.
Oh yes, we do have a website. Yes, that's very old fashioned.
ccc.scot.
Yeah, it is. And it's that's the thing. Even if somebody just wants to come along, because you're anonymous. You don't need to worry about us, judging you or thinking you've only drank one bottle of wine per year, so you're not qualified to be here, because it's totally anonymous. And that goes for people if they're thinking about being on the board or facilitating. Absolutely. Come along, try a session, see what we do, see what the benefits are, and see if it sits with you. We've also got an email address which you can email, which is info@ccc.scot, that you can contact for any information. But it's just, there's so many good avenues for people to come in and be part of this and the bigger picture, the future of what we do.
And again, I emphasize what you said. People can test it out. If you were interested in the board, a lot of people who are new to the board they come to a meeting or a couple of meetings, they meet the board members before they make any commitment, just to get a feel, see if the fit's right. It won't be right for everybody, but I hope people, know they can pick up the phone, send an email, and we'll talk to them.
Is it like a formal interview process? Is that what happens with these positions, or is it?
We haven't. We have effectively a job description for board members. It tries to describe what are the commitments, what's expected. That's about that mutual understanding. What will you get? What's expected of you? And then we tend to encourage people to talk to myself and a couple of other board members, to speak to people who work in the charity, and to attend a board meeting, at least one, and get a feel for it. We've never been in a position to turn someone down. We've also had people who don't want to become a board member, but want to do a piece of work for the board. We've had people, we can co-opt people to come to the board to do something. We had somebody who had some business acumen and wanted to help us with our business plan. He was with us for about 6 months, really active, came to the board meetings, did some work on the side, and gave us that. So there are lots of ways to contribute to the charity in different ways. And you mentioned becoming a facilitator, a participant, looking at what we have on social media, share it, tell your friends.
Yep, definitely. I know I'll be doing my TikTok today. It won't be the most professional thing because I'm not very good at it, as I think I said when I walked in here. So, but yeah, it's just all about sharing it and you passing it on to people that might benefit from it, and we'll hopefully get some good people coming aboard. Well, thanks very much, Tom. It's been a really good conversation with you today. I've really enjoyed learning a bit more about yourself and a different side of the organisation. So I'd really just like to encourage anybody out there that is interested about anything that we've spoken about or wanting to learn more. We are all over social media. If you're on TikTok, it's CCC Scott. We have got a website as well, which is www.ccc.scott, on Facebook, on Insta, all those other things. So again, Tom, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I really enjoyed talking to you and hearing about your story.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.